Sabato solo dopo c'è Gamba Giacone. La sene ti den donde ne ngato Gamba Shijabate Gotu to Chegisa.
So then let us meditate again for the next 10 or so minutes. And as always, try to relax the body and try to place the mind in a calm state. And as I strike this wooden ball, as I strike this singing ball, then we will actually begin to meditate.
this Ashana. Carreres or Natari only to wonder what Chidido, any Carresina, Lelosia de Don, any I just said in Chibada which Tongu said at all. Teaching the Tangazo Tombo, Ale Lelosia de la Lelosia di Dundada was in the middle, was in the middle, Cardigil Securities in the Lelosia, Chavati, La Nipi, Shum Depa, Shubala Drum. Show me the bar, Shubala, Chavati Chibala, Droa Mepa, and you show me the Bajila, and the little good up in it. Tangazo give out what you do, give each other the Dobala, Suzuki, and you give each other the Dobala, Droa Mepa, and show me the bar. Or to Nigila Carreseda, and then they lost or to Chini would ask.
So maybe I'll pick up on the discussion that we were having at the tail end of the session. Last session. So we were discussing about the difference between laziness and arrogance. So when we look at the kind of the entity of the mental factor of laziness itself, then in the text it is very clearly defined as that lack of joy in pursuing something, or that lack of desire to pursue something. And now try to apply it to, let's say, a virtuous activity that you want to accomplish. And if you do not feel any sense of joy in pursuing that virtuous activity, then it is exactly the mental factor of laziness that is stopping you from doing so. That's
Teach Tangajasia, the Kandiji Sewaina, Carres in a sinking bar, some Tisia Jadivan number, or some two number, or the Richie Carres and Ajas and Shivi was. She was a conic parola, and a cheva caridus, Tuscan, Corongi, Candada, what it said about the Tunuku to the son of the Chiton Adavina, Chichin and double. And this goes in the middle, lens in the middle, Sibuchani Nigaris. Majasia did a sinking bar, two in number chase. Lelo Siade Chavati, Shum Deba, Droameba, or to reach a Lelo Scudoas. And the Kuni Mada Cheva, or to do in the son of Domaina, and it is quite of a city like you are teaching that people you did.
So then, if laziness is that mental factor which lacks willingness and lacks joy in the pursuit of something, then arrogance is different than that. Arrogance is defined as that bloated sense of the self. Is that mental factor which kind of makes the mind a little bit too uplifted for its own good. It makes you feel a little bit too good about yourself. So in that process you develop a very bloated sense of self. So the way that we make sense of reality and make sense of our emotions is in the way that we articulate them. And it is important to understand their function and their nature in the way that we articulate them. And now as we begin to understand the way that from the Buddhist perspective they are articulated and defined in this manner, then maybe we are able to differentiate more clearly between these different mental factors.
Yeah. That's in the middle.
So if there are no other questions, maybe we can continue with the discussion. Anybody has a question? Not Raji's.
How to deal with the arrogant person?
Mi ngaje chimbu jingyamdo ani 동네 간데 쳐오레스 민가게 진보진염도 뒤고라스다 거기 나제들아 내 소소도 동네 간데 쳐오레스
레레 다 거기 나자들아 다 가서 돈에다 붙여야 쪼다 버커도 거기도 지 단데 컨디션도 하는 시 가서 가르랬으나 나자 세와다 보이나 나자 디기 쮸인도 뒤뒤로 산노도 또 나자 쮸인 가서 컨디니 지 시스마다 버와 어떻게 산노도 버도 근데 콜라 같이 지 돈에다 붙여와도 지와 이나요 그 나자 쳐보이자 근데 소소라 소소기 빠르게 있으나 배나 참주선남도 지 가르지 있나요 대중들 고요 있는다 찬도 있는다 가르치를 배 내주 침모지 요거요 봐 어떻게 돈이 산노 동과하다 차드거라 바주병 아자치부터 지요와이나 데라 가도지 낸다고 저와이나 근데 소소 바로라 가르쳐도 그래서는 근데 지진다 말레바이나 투바도 쇼야 또 쯧다고 쇼야 쯧다고 투바도 쇼와이나 아니 소소니 뒷바로라 아니 가르래서나 타는데 도와도 아니 피좀 먹어간다 보다 어떻게 돈이 봐도 아니 지 개변다 연내 거야 봐 어떻게 돈이 싸놓는 보통 아니 직제나 직차도 그러 제제도 아니 수진이 가자스야 되기 니미티 수도 있어도 보통 어디라고 지어야라고 이나 아니 가서 다 놓치는 가자기 돈에 제스야 돼 어디리스네 디그미도서
So then in how to deal with an arrogant person. So then first it is very important to understand the affliction of arrogance itself rather than focusing on an arrogant person. This is important because if we understand the nature of arrogance itself, then we begin to understand the implications of arrogance, how it manifests itself in behavior, speech, thought, and so forth. And if we are able to understand it, then we will understand what triggers an arrogant person, and so on and so forth. This is important. That's why from the Buddhist perspective, it is important to first meditate and contemplate on the false or negative consequences of arrogance. It is in effect a kind of way to understand the implications of arrogance itself. And when you understand that, then you now have a better understanding of how to deal with an arrogant person. You know what kind of approach works, what kind of response would it elicit from an arrogant person. So you are already more skillful in dealing with an arrogant person. So if you are not skillful and you do not take into account the negative consequences of arrogance as an afflictive emotion itself, then you might immediately kind of anger an arrogant person with the way that you approach the person, with the way you try to deal with that person. So that's why it's very important first to understand the negative consequences of arrogance itself. And when you understand that, then you will understand how it will manifest in the behavior of an arrogant person. In that way, you are much more conscientious, you are much more aware of like what kind of talk, speech would trigger such a person. So you are much more skillful and deliberate in your way of approaching such a person. And this is important. And so from the Buddhist perspective, we wouldn't look at the arrogant person per se as a person who is as an aggressor. We would look at the affliction itself as something to be overcome or dealt with rather than the person. That's okay.
야. 다때네 가서 맞지 도와도 이나나 다 가서 가서 되는 줘야 돼. 아니 신이 주기 띵이 짓기 그때 만도네 아니 띵이 뒤고대 아니 답쪽이 둘lun도 더 도시지네 대신에 버렸지 아니 자시바다 버지레스야 대지제
So then now to kind of continue with our presentation on shamatha as a meditative practice, then we were discussing about the 9 mental states and how these 9 mental states are achieved through the 6 powers.
제존 다 둘이 지용데 심리 게대요 아주 가족 컨디션은 나시리 크론축이 바란스는 모두 디카르스는 페나 야 체다고 이나 동분이 니바체 토르다 니바네 삼바도 지니야 체토르로 또 미바테는 루고 여바다 어디리 지니야 야 보란다 보지니 어도 지니야 루고 여러와서 되지지야.
So if we remember, then the 9 mental states in themselves are not random mental states, but a gradual progression and development of clarity, stability of the visualization and the attention, as well as concentration.
어떤지 용어도 또 하나 시기 아니 스니리릭이 니가스요 지 소소 가르스는 냠농다 버때 만다와레레라고도 스니 동복가서 아니 가르스는 남도 뇌시미냠 시아티 지 남도 모부지 지송 때문에 들이 농아지 중국에 이내에 나도 모니케인도고 야말 소소 가르스는 나도다 버티 뇌시미 냐다 버지 연구요레시 니비가서 나도디 가르스는 아소비냠 아소가 생운데 바로 예라 바로 메데와 든디기 노안다 버지 용어도 와스.
And all of these different mental states are marked by particular experiences of the mental states. So for example, when we're talking about the first mental state, then in the first mental state, the experience is marked by an awareness, an initial awareness of the discursive thoughts and emotions. We feel like as if these has increased, but where in effect we just are starting to become aware of the kind of numerous discursive thoughts and emotions that play themselves out in the mind. Whereas in the second mental state, we now, as we train in concentrating on the meditation device, then we begin to experience that these discursive thoughts and emotions come and go, and then we get the experience that these thoughts or these discursive thoughts and emotions somewhat becomes peaceful at certain times.
어때지? 다스는 because 나도디 가르스나 통치바. 통치비니 가르스는 냠정성 어디. 선이 수비니 가서 아니 남도디 가르스는 디스만 요네라고요 봐. 뒤늦게 아니 나와다고 냠농다고 어들지는 용구였어요. 되지지.
And by the third mental state, you begin to experience that the discursive thoughts and emotions have somewhat subsided.
되지 용도 되지지. 근데 동부터 가르레스 와이나 선이 동분이 되라. 니 가르레스나 미발그 주리 동이 제바였어라. 선이 동분다고 이나 미발을 추스마도 니 마타바다고 차도거든. 아니 선이 니바데나 딜리 동불리 디스 미발을 주링스니 왜요바. 뒤늦게 미발라 아니 니바데요 가르레 주리 동도 지네 제바였어. 되지 용도.
Then in the first mental state, the duration of being able to concentrate on the meditation device is very short-lived. Whereas in the second mental state, you are able to kind of concentrate a little bit longer than the first mental state on the meditation device.
되지. 다 니바도 선반이나 가르쳐 봐 요새는 이월인 통. 가르쳐는 니비가스 니발이 되대 선바디 섬초로디 이만도 통하다고 해도 니바디 디시리 링어요 봐. 니바도 선반이디 이와 섬초로디 이와를 대라요 가르쳐는 주니 통기 도시제네네 제바여서 도시지 송그래서 되지지.
And then gradually at the third mental state, then the duration of distraction decreases a little bit compared to the second mental state.
되지. 아니 선바도 셔바니라 미데 쇼시 미시지 제바레도 다 심비니가서 레 미데디 쇼시바도 시비니가서 스니 시바지라고 해나 되니 미바쇼 미시바 어떻게 미딩 쇼시 미시비 두시제네네 제바여서 되지 연구도서.
So then at the third mental stage, you are still at the risk of losing the meditation device completely. And at the fourth mental stage, then it is almost quite impossible for you to lose the meditation device completely.
되지 이거다 되지지 ene shiba da ngaba ni la ta chiwa ra ba ji mi ji gi chiba ji shi gi do shi bi ka se chiwa ra ba ji gi yo ba da ngabi ka se ani ka re chiwa ra ba ani me che wa o tu gi shiba da ngaba ni la chiwa ri ba ra ba ji mi ji gi chiba da to si yo se yo re sa ti ji ji.
So then the difference in the experience of the mental state between the fourth and the fifth is that in the fourth mental state you still continue to experience gross dullness, but by the fifth mental state you do not experience gross dullness at all.
Deji lagdo deji je da dini ngaba do tuba ni la chiwa chamu la to sun gu mu gu si chizo ngaba do tuba ni la chiwa chamu de la ani chi to sun gu dong mu gu bi o tundu gi chiba yungu yo sa ji lagdo.
So then the difference of experience in the fifth and the sixth mental state is whether one needs to guard the mind against subtle dullness or not.
Te ma se ani sini tubi ni ka se yo goba chamu chiwa de yo ani ngamali nyori do gu yo si.
So then by the sixth mental state, the subtle excitement begins to subside a little bit.
Deji ta choba do dumba ni la chinga chamu shuni ji to su chimbu gyum gyu gi o duri ji ni cheba yes choba do dumba ni la chima do goba chamu ni ga la pe to su chimbu ji gyu ba do mu gyu bi o duri gi ni cheba yungu yes deji le gdon.
And then the difference in the experience of the mental states in the sixth and the seventh is that whether one needs to be totally aware and totally be vigilant of subtle dullness and subtle excitement. Yes.
Deji ta dumba do jeba ni la ani chinga yumi gi cheba dumbi ka se ani chinga do goba de chamo de yoba da che jibi ni ka se ani ka re se na meba o tu chi ni cheba yungu yo sa chi lo.
And then the difference of experience in the mental state between the seventh and the eighth is whether there is one experiences subtle dullness, subtle excitement, or not. Yes.
Deji ani jeba do goba ni la be chen le tu mu ji cheba yo la sa re jibi ni ka se semi pa la tumani jubi ni ka be chen do tu sting gu re so an do dis chi gu re gibi ni ka sami pa le te ba sam ji kon ta re se na kon tu ma du pa de ta ro mi pa le lenja de ni te gu yo se ni la be chen tu mu gu bi o tu chi ni cheba yungu yo sa o te ji le do.
And the difference between the eighth and the ninth mental state is the experience of effort required. So as we already discussed, in the eighth mental state, if you only need to kind of put up a little bit effort in placing the mind on the meditation device at the start of a session. And after that, you are able to place the mind totally on the meditation device. But by the ninth mental state, there is no effort required at all. The concentration and attention is very uniform, spontaneous, and effortless.
제도 드리도 차도 제도다 단단한 공리 신디야기 dimba roba dimba ni la jingo chamu shuni ji dokzi chimu gum gusya de peda ba karjin shi ore sena pena 드리자 도 dimbica jingo gutsan le tele shuni ji dokzi chimu gusre da tubindika se jinwa do goba chamu yongwa se bi dokzi chimu ji gugres 아니 디비니까 드리 dokzi chimu ji gugre wesena gogoyo mares 제제 가르레스나 dimba se jingo chamu de ni mo ji no gora 지금 참 집이 니버지 집이 니가 스폰도 고요와 제가 대니가 가르쳐도 그래서나 바지 지원도 그바 처음에 디스 가르쳐서나 마주다 보이는 슈다 보다 마짜차레스 배나 마다버지 저와에나 바주 마들 판이 슈침부 동사에는 치스콜 마들 마저와에는 대전지 콜라 독순 침보지 고거리에서는 고고요 말 가르쳐서 바주 마들 니바메바다 니바디 냠바 소사로 와서 어때 논식이 디비니가스 징거 처음에 니버지 제자와 인자 지금 전부 이마 독서지 고고거리데 얘는요 되게 독서 흉침보지 고거리 위해서나 고고에 말해서 되게 네 제바지 연구도.
So then if we talk about the difference of experience in the sixth mental state and the seventh mental state, then we said that it's an experience of whether one has to be totally vigilant against subtle dullness and excitement or not. So by the sixth mental state, you begin to be in the sixth mental state, you have to be totally vigilant of the very real danger of experiencing subtle dullness and subtle excitement. But as you begin to apply the particular antidotes to these experiences of subtle dullness and subtle excitement, by the seventh mental state you would have completely rendered these kind of subtle dullness and subtle excitement powerless. So in the kind of classical text, the analogy used is like if someone wages a war against someone else, a group wages a war against someone else, then if you have completely overcome the troops, then there is not much need of having to be wary of that group that you have already defeated. So similarly, by the seventh mental state, even though there is a sort of vigilance required, but one shouldn't be, one doesn't really need to be like totally wary and totally vigilant and worry about, concern oneself about such dullness and excitement. Yes.
Tateche, Nechini, Dingy good day, Tap Jogging the load of the Tinti Chataboche, Takarasana, Sinin, you think it's good, and Jacarasana, Yijis Yachi. The Dele Yijis, you will race. Yiji the Carasana Tombote, and the Jenny Juba, down. Nibadi Carre, Chijin Jubarwa, somebody Carasana, Cheba Mevaton, Jabadi Carasana, and the lynch to be Yijis or Tuschini. 이지시 군이 텔레 이지시 유치도 어두지니 텔레 이지시 여바스 어두진 듯이 자고 그랬어야 돼.
So then these are the kind of experiences one can expect in the pursuit of the different mental states of samadhi or shamatha. And now furthermore in the classical presentation, in the exploration of the different mental states of shamatha, then it is also explored through what we call mental engagements or the type of attentions. And so the first type of mental engagement is forcible mental engagement. Second is interrupting mental engagement. And the third is an uninterrupted engagement. And the fourth is effortless engagement. So engagement herein could be understood as attention itself.
That so the Sini Tombuni de la Carasana, Dendi Jubi, Sigores, Sini Tombuni de Carasana, Saint Jubaton, non de Jubatini, Dendi Juba, Jims in the Carasana, and the TC Pedro, Denny, but the between of sort of Chig, oats the Shuchibo of Chibo and the Care, the Nika Yedilla, and the Dendi Jubi, Jes, Tombuni down.
So then the first two mental states require a sort of forced attention. Because since we are not used or we haven't trained our concentration and attention before, we have to kind of force the mind to place its attention on the object of meditation. So that's why the kind of mental engagement or attention is forceful, or forced or forcible engagement. Thus.
Baba nga sere ta dini sumbani dumbi pa de nga yores sumbani dumbi pa de nga di karesena chejin jubi je sore ta karesena chejin jubi je karesena ti paru tila ani mi ba tela chiwa do goba la so ba ge ni pe chuni jugo yo wa yinza pa chen do je ni jugo yo za karere chejin jubi je baba nga tela sumbani dumbi pa nga tela chejin jubi je gresa.
So then from the third mental state to the seventh mental state, then the type of attention is interrupted attention or interrupting mental engagement. This is because the main challenge of dullness and excitement in both its subtle and gross form begins to interrupt our attention or concentration.
Then 제바들 가르에서는 제바미비 이제스 가르에서는 제비니가서는 지금 통보다 지원 그바도 돌아 강가 봉사와 인자 대니가서 미발라 바지 징게 메바 인자 가르래 제비니가 되라 아니 제바미비 이제스 오투치니 스그레스 아테죠.
So then by the eighth mental stage you have overcome grossness, subtle dullness and dullness and excitement in both its subtle and gross forms. So then there is not much kind of interruption experience. So that is why it is called uninterrupted engagement or uninterrupted attention. Thus.
대제 다 고발라 가라스나 린지 to be 예지 좀 린지 to be 예지 온 가라스나 기비니가서 아니 가라스나 베전하고 조어하고 좀 때문에 그 봐야자 지미바데 신 송어점지 아니 가라스나 베 튀다고지 마송바데 저 토와야자 아니 가라 린지 to 봐서 베전 그 봐야자 아니 가라 린지 to be 예지 어두시니 주그레사지요.
So then the last type of mental engagement or attention is spontaneous attention. So by the ninth mental state, you do not require any effort in the application of concentration on the meditation device. It is spontaneous and effortless. Once you begin to concentrate on an object of meditation, then you are able to maintain that concentration as long as you want.
들ቻ르도 어드리치온데 다테송데 디파로라 도바다바치 가르치 연구요레서와이나 순반이 듄비팔 체진주비 이제 샤레 아니 동보다 니바데솔라 체진주비 이제 샤고도 드닌주비 이제 샤레스 얘나요 동보다 니비가서 아니 친구 고발라소바데다게 아니 바치 지게로 와서 미발을 추거로 와 세운데 대 추기요레스 얘나요 디가서 선도 동변니가서 아니 가르레스나 체진주비 이제 마자비 제시 가르레스와 디 니가서 미발을 니바데 디 누누라고 이제 바디추 메추시아디 시라 메바이자 미발을 주르보 니메타바이자 어느 콜라카레 체지주비 지스티노로 마동바다고 차그레 마도 제단 지글라소바게 미발을 추그레 위해서는 추기 요레스 얘나요코 미발을 니바데 디스 통통라고 지 마도 메바이자 아니 체지주비 지스티노로 마도비 제세라고데 어투시 예스 대jel고도.
So then a question arises at this point: why is the first two mental states explained to be a forcible type of engagement, and the next five, from the third to the seventh, explained to be interrupting engagement or an interrupted form of attention? Because isn't it the case that even in the first two mental states, one begins to be affected, the concentration begins to be affected by excitement, and due to excitement, doesn't one lose the meditation device in the first two mental states? Then it is explained that there is a technical reason why the first two are explained to be a forcible type of engagement, and the next five are explained to be an interrupting type of engagement or attention. Because in the first two mental states, one cannot really call the type of attention that is type of attention an interrupted type of attention, because we are not even able to place our mind fully on the object of on the meditation device for enough time to call it an interruption in the first place. You have to kind of it is just the whole the whole experience in the first two mental states are marked more by the loss of meditation device than the ability to sustain them. So you wouldn't really call these interruptions.
어째서들이 자고도 최종 대전에 말로 말해서 다 선반이 아니 가르스네 dimbi 받에 체진주비 지지고 가르쳐서는 수비니가서 더 도구는 디비답스 제도고 해서 디니가스 니가르스 디비답데 지어서인다 미발의 주린디 레니니도 해서 아니 디파로를 징화도 고발라서밖에 받지 제바해서 아니 체진주비 지스 도마다고 가르쳐서는 수비가서 대박되게 되는 미바시토고 요레스 미바시토고 요마 수비니가서 미발의 쇼시바다고 자네스 지빈디가서 미바 쇼미시바다고 레스 둘이랍사라 되는 sonde 미발의 니바데 주린디 도 요아인자 디차니 아니 콜카레 스바이나 아니 체진주비 예제스 동그 비제세다보데 도스라고 예스고레사 대지죠.
So then it relates to the direct experience of the mental states themselves. So by the third mental state, we already discussed that you begin to develop the power of mindfulness. And once you develop the power of mindfulness, you are able to sustain your concentration on the meditation device for long periods of time. And when you do that, then you begin to experience interruptions in the form of excitement, dullness, and so forth. And then, as we said, by the fourth mental state, you have completely perfected the power of mindfulness. So then it is almost impossible from that point onwards to lose the meditation device completely. But you still could be interrupted by bouts of experiences of dullness and excitement.
제도 다데 로사로 다디 지딩 아주 가르레스나 신인년 주기 띵이 그것도 델델 딱쪽 들러도 아니 델라 가르레스나 애니 이지지 유지 사데서 당아서 데시도 버럽지 제시마도 버레서.
So now that is a kind of general and very short explanation on the aspects of the nine mental state of shamatha and how it is achieved through the six powers, and how in the experience of the nine mental states you begin to understand there are different types of attention or engagements. Yes.
제도 드리지 다 신이 년족이 띵이 거바티 니가서 아니 그때라 봐 집이 니가서 아무래도 좋아도 디스 지고 그래서 이내용 좋아 통고도 좋아지 정도데 아니 다 투마드 바데 미발에 지지디 니티게레 그비 니가서 가르스는 미발에 템바섬지 마도 아니 가르라서는 콜라 좋아도 그 지고 그래서는 지고가 말에 지와도 그밖에 요래서는 요 말에서 그런 간다버지 자와다버지 이내용 주스시스라고 하는 뒤지 미발에 지지디 데터야 어 뒤르기 가르스나 띵이지스야 신이 띵이지스야디 디가 조여리디 이내고 단어 디가 신이스야디 다 요래서나 다 요 말에서.
So then as we already discussed, by the eighth mental state you perfect the power of effort, and by the eighth mental state you only need to exert a little bit of effort at the start of the session, where you place the mind on the meditation device, and after that you do not need to exert any effort in the meditation, because you have overcome all forms of subtle dullness, subtle excitement, and so forth. And by the ninth mental state, as you have completely perfected the power of effort, then you do not need any effort at all. As soon as you sit down to meditate, you are able to concentrate without any resistance. And then you are able to maintain that concentration for stretches of time, like for up to 4 hours, 5 hours, without any interruption. Now the question arises, at that stage you have achieved what we call one-pointed concentration, or samadhi itself, meditative equipoise. But have you still achieved true shamatha at this point? Then this is not the case.
제좀 다 던디디 그반년 저기 띵이지데 니고 신이 잡아라 가르고 그래서 다 신종시야지 지고 그래서 아니 신종시야데 가르지 지와도 지와이나 아니 디찬고 아니 신이 시야데 니고 자기 열에서 되지지.
So in order for one to achieve true shamatha, then one has to develop what we call pliancy or suppleness. If you develop pliancy or suppleness, then you have experienced or you have actualized true shamatha.
어떻게 돌아? 되는 가서 마치지. 아니 야초도 가돌라. 아니 가서 봐 신이 뭐지? 보통도 도치지마. 아니 대신에 여기에서.
So okay, we will stop here and break for tea.